Hello all. Today's video I wanted to talk about character buffs. We've finally gone through the first round, having been Kafka, Silverwolf, Jingliu, and Blade. And in my opinion, and many others, there are obviously many more to be given buffs. And so in this video I just wanted to talk about 3 characters off the top of my head that need buffs the most desperately currently, right? And these 3 characters are Topaz, Argenti, and Jiaoqiu. That's right, Jiaoqiu, a midway through version 2 character, I do believe needs a buff quite badly. So let's start off with Jiaoqiu. Jiaoqiu is utter trash. This is someone who doesn't even become semi-usable in dot comps until he gets his E2. And without E2, basically the only reason he's there is either as an Acheron bot or to provide 35% vulnerability. And now with the release of Cypher, there is straight up just zero reason to use Jiaoqiu. Even outside of the fact that he has worse base vulnerability compared to Cypher, Cypher does more damage and does not require effect hit rate. Jiaoqiu actually does require a decent amount of effect hit rate built up, right? And so he does no damage. He has worse vulnerability compared to a Nihility who doesn't even require effect hit rate, and this said Nihility can hit near 200 speed, record damage done by allies, all that good stuff, right? And so it's quite clear that there is a pretty bad, issue with Jiaoqiu, being that basically at E0S0, all this guy does is give you 35% vulnerability in his kit, and occasionally for ultimate DPSs, 50% vulnerability. However, this is just not that good, especially these days when we're getting supports that just have vulnerability already, such as Cypher, such as Tribby, and such as Sustains with their light cones. Even Hyacine with her light cone gives 18% vulnerability. Hyacine has more than half of E0S0 Jiaoqiu's kit in her light cone. That is how bad this guy is. He very, very badly needs a buff, and I can't hear any opinions from, a differing side with how bad he is, right? After Jiaoqiu, we go into Topaz. Now, Topaz still isn't too bad, but the problem is she only really had one niche, being the follow-up teams, and now Cypher is there, and most people who don't own Topaz would just run Cypher, or what a lot of people do, including me, just fucking run March or Moze, right? March or Moze are incredibly comparable to Topaz, if not better, depending on the situation. And then Cypher has the way better Lycone and Eidolon investment for those who want to go vertical on their follow-up team, leading to Topaz kind of being an afterthought, right? The only time I think Topaz is actually better than Cypher is if you're using E2 Fei Xiao, I believe. But even then, it's also enemy lineup dependent, and Cypher just has so much more value for a shit ton of other teams that there's just no reason to ever consider Topaz, right? And once again, you can just use March or Moze if you don't have Topaz as well, who are also comparable and are 4 stars. So I do think Topaz quite badly needs a buff. She's really missing a best-in-slot team, in my opinion. And so this makes it to where her pull value just isn't that good. This is kind of the same problem I criticized Sparkle for when Sunday released. She had no best-in-slot teams. Her best-in-slot teams with E2 Acheron and as well Dill were taken away by Sunday with Lycone. And now Sparkle was left with being, decent for a lot of characters, right? She is still a good option. She's still gonna buff your team a lot, right? But is she actually worth pulling on? No, right? And so Topaz is now kind of suffering from the exact same thing that Sparkle suffered from before Archer, right? No best in slot team, no reason to pull when we have way better upcoming supports like Ceridra. We have the triple harmony rerun in 3.4, Tribby, Sunday, and Sparkle, right? Sunday and Tribby are two of the highest value supports in the entirety of the game right now, in my opinion, fighting for the #1 spot in terms of pull value. So a lot of people aren't going to bother with a Sparkle unless they really love Archer, and the exact same thing applies for Topaz, right? But I'd argue Topaz's case is even worse, because at least with Sparkle, she is a general harmony, so she can be used in multiple teams, and on top of this, she does have the best in slot with Archer. Topaz, it's hard to say she's concretely best in slot for anything, and she doesn't have that great a value outside of follow-up teams in the slightest. So 100% needs a buff. I'd love to see her get reworked. As you can see, I decided to make her the wallpaper for this video, right? And then after Topaz, we have Argenti. Now, Argenti is still aging quite well in terms of pure fiction performance. I mean, that's expected from someone who can ult spam constantly. Argenti, I wouldn't be making this video if they didn't nerf Tribby. So for those who don't know, old Tribby before V4 hit, she was able to do a follow-up every time an ally ulted, right? She didn't have that bullshit, one cap, right? Like one ally uses an ultimate, and then until Tribby ultimates again, you can't follow up if that ally ultimates. She didn't have that bullshit. Just whenever someone ulted, she would be able to do a follow-up. And the Argenti showcases were going absolutely insane with Tribby, right? He would ult so constantly, and it would lead to Tribby's damage output being insanely high. However, they then nerfed this and capped it, and so even though Argenti is still amazing with Tribby, it's nowhere near the glory of what it used to be. Argenti has great value for pure fiction, or great is a bit of a stretch, but he has good value, right? However, there is just no reason to pull in Argenti because of how shit his value in every other mode, right? It's basically a pure fiction bot, and that's it. And if all you need is a pure fiction bot, then you can just get Tribby or Hyacine, run that wheelchair comp, and that comp can probably max score pure fiction in of itself, right? And you get way more value this way because you're getting arguably the top harmony in the entirety of the game and the top sustain in the entirety of the game. So as you can see, there's a big problem here where a version 3 support can clear pure fiction, by themselves as the DPS, compared to a version 1 DPS literally targeted towards AoE content. Right. So this is my opinion on the 3 characters who I think most need buffs currently. If I had to choose a 4th, because it seems HSR is doing like 4 characters being buffed. If I had to choose a 4th, it would probably be Dill, right? I do think it would probably be Dill who needs a buff. Sorry for my dog in the background. The reason Dill needs a buff is quite simple. Dill consumes too much skill points for too low of damage, right? At the time, he was the tippity top dog. However, now that we're in version 3, using 3 skill points on a Dill is like the equivalent of My Day or Casterus using their skill that consumes legit 0 skill points in terms of damage, right? So there's a very clear problem. He's too SP hungry without dishing out the good damage in return anymore. Mainly because of the HP inflation, the power creep, all that. So I do think Dill needs a buff because of how SP hungry he is. Hell, he is more, arguably more SP hungry than Archer, right? Since he consumes 3 per turn. And I mean, that's it. Right? Dill just is in a bad spot. he just consumes too much skill points, doesn't do enough damage in return for those skill points. I truly find it hilarious that, like, my day consuming no skill points and casters consuming no skill points can do more damage than this guy on his skill, right? Like, you really got to put that in perspective. That is quite insane. But yeah, that's my thoughts on everything. All the buffs that I want to see for characters. Topaz, Argenti, Dill, and who was the other one I said? Topaz, Argenti, Jiaoqiu, right? Jiaoqiu, I'd argue Jiaoqiu and Topaz probably need the buffs the most, in my opinion, right? These two need the buffs the most because they're kind of supportive figures, so all their value is based off of how well they can support another team or other characters. And unfortunately, their value in that, you know, type of niche is non-existent at this point, right? There's just 0 point to get these characters in the slightest, or even use them if you have the better options, right? Let me know what you guys think. That's all I have to say. Love y'all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Peace out.